Hello and welcome to Mind, Body, Sleep, the podcast for anyone out there who wants to understand and recover from insomnia using a holistic perspective. I'm Beth Kendall, your host. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mind, Body, Sleep podcast. My name is Beth. I'm a sleep coach for people with insomnia, and I am super happy to be joined once again by another sleep coach who also just happens to be one of my closest friends. Her name is Michelle Weil. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be back.
Well, I'm so glad you're back. And for any of the listeners out there who aren't familiar with Michelle, this is it the third time?
I think it's the third. I think third,
time.
Maybe fourth.
Might be fourth. That she's been on the pod. And if you haven't listened to her other episodes, you absolutely must because they're amazing. I'll link those up in the show notes. But Michelle and I are always talking about all the podcasts that we could do together because we talk pretty much every day. And I feel so fortunate to have that friend in my life that you can bounce the same idea off 1,000 different ways. And, you know, it just never gets old. But we were talking about the role of researching when you have insomnia. And I think it's safe to say that many, if not most of us who run into the experience of insomnia are pretty good researchers. So Michelle, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off by telling us first a bit about you and how the role of researching played out in your experience of insomnia. But first, I have to say, I wasn't sure if I was going to bring this up, but I'm thinking to your message that you left right before we got on the Zoom call. And I think there's something that you want the world to know about watermelon.
Well, which part, Beth?
Maybe we could just have a quick little mini pod on everything we've learned about watermelon. Folks, we are having a watermelon summer. And the way this all played out is I finally, in my 50s, got an adult chef's knife, like a really... Like I'm really finally adulting when you get the real knife. Yeah. And this led to watermelon is my all-time favorite food, but I don't like chopping the watermelon. And so my boyfriend got me this beautiful knife and we learned all about knives and how to hold them and what to look for. And it was fascinating. And he loves the process of chopping watermelon. And this has created a daily watermelon experience in my summer. So I was telling Michelle about this, this something called black diamond watermelons. And I know you don't have them in Canada, Michelle. I'm so sorry for you.
Well, wait, we might. I just haven't found one yet. It might not be the season. I think you have to wait till the end of season. So I have not given up hope.
Okay, good. I might actually have to quote research that on the
You might. We may have to research the black. I've already done a little bit of research, but I will have to dive back in.
It's so apropos. But yeah, so I was telling Michelle, it kind of opened up with this black diamond watermelon, and she got to thinking, you know, life, like, why wouldn't we have watermelon all summer? And the ripple effect of this watermelon story has you know, my parents have now had nonstop watermelon. The minute they finish one, they go out and get another one, and they're only like $3 down in Arizona, these giant watermelons. And so, Michelle, tell the listeners quick and like a condensed version of what you were telling me earlier today, because I didn't know.
Well, first of all, I had watermelon right before jumping on this podcast.
Of course.
So that was it's just part of my day now. And I love that you have the adult knife. It's a very adult experience to have I have a good knife as well. And I feel so like nice. Such an adult using it.
Yes.
And I find I'm the watermelon cutter in our house. And I find it very satisfying to cut up a watermelon. Feels very productive. And we were talking about how to find a good one.
Yeah.
How to find a good one. And this is something that I had been researching. And
Here we go.
Exactly. And you know what? Very proud of researching and all the things. And I found out something new yesterday about picking out a good watermelon that I was very excited to tell you about because I didn't know if you knew and you didn't. So this is all very life-changing. But we were talking about looking for a watermelon with a certain weight or density. If it looks small, but it's kind of heavy, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
that yellow patch, you want that. That's good. Don't shy away from that. That can mean it's a sweet watermelon. And then what I learned yesterday was the ends, they have a stem, and then there's this little, I don't know what to call it. I was calling it a nubbin.
Yes.
The nubbin on the other side. You want to look for the smallest nubbin possible because that means it was on the vine longer. It's sweeter. So I'm excited to take all this research and go out and see if I can optimize and find absolutely the best watermelon that I can possibly find. And I'm excited because I'm probably going to go out possibly after this podcast to go watermelon shopping.
I love it.
It's that important. It's become that important in my household to have watermelon.
And, I had no idea about the stem, like looking for the stem that way. And I just have to add, because my dad told me this when I was down there last week, that with the yellow, you have to look for it to be buttery yellow.
Yes.
That is the key word.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. Yes. You want to look for a buttery yellow. It's important.
Yeah, because it means that it wasn't picked too early. It's been on the ground long enough to ripen. And
yeah. So it's like this, it's very counterintuitive because if you see a watermelon and it actually looks, let's say, very pretty, just green, you might want to get it, but you really want to look for that buttery yellow spot.
100%. Yeah. Want to look for the ugly watermelon.
Exactly. It looks a little uglier, but it's going to taste better. And then we could again, we could go on for a long time. We each have different cutting systems.
Just do a podcast on watermelons for how much time we have devoted this summer to talking about watermelons, because we go into how to cut the watermelon.
Yeah. There's different ways. And you know what? I think there's a right way. I'm just going to say
I know. We could have a whole debate about that.
Huge debates.
Totally.
Huge debates.
Totally. So, I think this is the perfect segue into this topic of researching. So back to you, and tell us about you and what researching looked like for you.
Sure. So just like Beth, I'm a sleep coach as well. And I struggled with really severe insomnia for about 5 years before recovering and coming into the coaching space. And when we were first thinking about this topic, all the memories of how much of a researcher I really was started to come back to me. And before I really understood insomnia, and I was in these years of really just confusion and fear and not understanding what was going on. Why couldn't I sleep? Why did I have so many symptoms? Why was I constantly anxious? And I just felt like my brain and body was no longer my own. I didn't understand anything. So during those years, I was really constantly in a research loop of some kind. Now, the topics would change. I might stay on a topic for even more than a year at a time. I was an avid researcher. I think I could have been paid to be a researcher during this time. That's how in depth I could even take courses. And I would spend so much time reading papers and Googling and books. You name it. I was deep into research mode for years and years at a time. I was trying to sort of turn over every rock and look under it. Could this be it? Could this be how I was broken? What about this? What about, every topic from hormones to dysautonomia to Parkinson's to, I can't even list them all, just all the things. And it was very consuming. Yeah. And it also felt at the time extremely necessary.
Yes.
Extremely. It felt like a life or death situation. And so that I needed to research my way out of that life or death situation, essentially, is what it felt like. So it felt like the most essential research that, I could be doing. And I would never have known at the time that, that it wasn't going to lead anywhere, and that it was actually part of what was fueling this really hard experience that I was having.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Everything that you're saying, so very similar to my own experience. And of course, I had insomnia for decades. So my researching evolved. I remember as a young girl checking out books at the library and reading them and then turning them back in and checking them out again and reading them again.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, my researching skills evolved over the eras with the introduction of Google, which honestly just 10x'd everything.
Oh my goodness. I have a moment of such empathy that your research period was also before Google. So you had to really earn it. You were a real researcher.
Yeah. I mean, how deeply this behavioral pattern became ingrained with my way of life. And, of course, with the internet, the researching capacity just got, so much bigger. And I'm really overloading my brain with just a tremendous amount of information. Yet I didn't understand how I could know so much about sleep, but still struggle with it more than anyone I knew. And it just would be this vicious cycle of, okay, well, I've got to learn more. I've got to learn more. I've got to learn more. And I think, you really touched on it with that word confusion, is because I didn't understand what was going on. And no one could really explain it to me. The places, the people, the things I was doing to seek help weren't helping me. And so I think, the allure of researching for me was that it made me feel like I was doing something. It was and it really did on some level become a bit of an addiction for me, but it made me feel productive. It made me feel protective. I couldn't find help anywhere else, but at least I could keep going online and try to find that piece that surely had to be out there somewhere, and like I said, I think, looking for that information or that piece in and of itself became an addiction. But, how many times have we heard people say to us, I kind of gave it one last ditch effort and I went online and that's when I found you. So it isn't like it's all bad. It's really not, because in some ways, people, this is how they find us. But
plus we've just established that the watermelon research was very necessary.
Look how fruitful. Look how fruitful.
Well done. Well done.
So yeah, I mean, this is such a, just such a common thing that our folks run up against. But here's the thing, let me ask you this, Michelle. When would you say that researching stops becoming helpful?
Yeah.
Or when does it become a bit of a trap?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first thing to know is that what we're describing is really I like how you use that word. It becomes sort of addictive. You're in it. It feels like it's like, well, at least I'm doing something, right? And it feels very necessary. And I think a lot of it really was a result of being in that, for both of us and for so many people, being in this constant sort of fight or flight survival response, where the story of being in that survival response is, I got to fix it now or else. Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. And if that's not even a conscious story, that's the feeling of being there, is I've got to fix it now or else, all the time, sort of driving that research loop.
Yep.
And so where it becomes unhelpful is really when it becomes this very fear-driven process, right? Where it's an extension of that fear. And it's so tricky because in the moment, it can feel a little better because, like what you just said, it feels like you're doing something. And the part of us that feels like we really want to fix and control will feel better by doing this. Mm-hmm. And so it does feel a little bit better, but it never actually gets us where we want to go. And it just becomes this very fear-driven process, as opposed to what you mentioned before, like a learning-driven process, which is very, very different. And so thinking about, well, what's actually driving this? Is this fear, or is this a desire to learn, or something that feels inspiring and joyful, or something that can be enjoyed in some way? It's really a different underlying driver. What do you think?
100%. And I think the watermelon research is a perfect example of this. Like, this has not been a fear-driven research process. It is sheer interest. And how fascinating that there's these videos out there that show you how to cut a watermelon in the most efficient way. So I think it goes back to intention, as it so often does. And, the ways that I see researching becoming a bit of a trap is when you're in something. So sometimes like people might be in the program and they know it's helping them.
Yeah.
But then they're looking, just in case, you know what I mean? And so it's like, this is helping, but what if I'm missing something out there? I've got to look just in case, very human, very human.
That's really common. That's a big one.
It is. Yep. And I think another way it can become less helpful, and this is something you can definitely look for, is when you leave a span of research feeling more anxious instead of less. That's sort of a clue that, okay, this is something you might want to visit. Or like back to my first point, you begin to start doubting what is helping you or what is working for you.
Yes.
Like when research starts pulling you out of that, then okay, this is not as helpful. This is becoming less helpful for me. And of course, the biggest one I think is that when researching starts pulling you out of trust with your own body, right? And we unconsciously start outsourcing our own inner knowingness to Google or just some sort of authority out there that we put more stock in than our own natural wisdom that we all hold inside. And I think for me, that's what I have to be very aware of. And also just that back to the intention of, am I looking for something to fix me? Because the invisible message back to ourselves with that intention is that what we are or something within us is broken. Or is it strictly from that educational standpoint? I want to understand more about this. I want to understand my experience. I want to know more about watermelon. I know, that is such a different driver than the fixing orientation.
Oh, so, hugely. Yes, that's completely different.
Yeah.
But I think what you touched on is the most important piece of this is that it can take us away from our own inner knowing, our own trust, our own intuition, and think that we have to outsource that somewhere externally. We're going to find the answer out there if we just keep digging and keep digging and trying to fix. And it's like, we're not looking in the one place we could actually find the most helpful information within ourselves. And even when we're in states of anxiety and we're feeling scared, we can still access our own inner knowing. It can feel a little bit harder with that sort of noise around it, but it's still there. And that's always going to lead us somewhere so much more helpful than any amount of all this external research. And would you agree that that is actually the thing that can point you in the direction of maybe research that could be helpful versus feeling like you have to do all the research about all the things?
Yeah. Like I said, I think, sometimes research itself isn't good or bad. It is just like how we're using it and getting to know ourselves and how we're in relationship with this experience of insomnia and in relationship with sleep, and starting to notice like, how am I using this? Or what is the intention? Or noticing like, if it's a fear-driven process, like just like, it's really learning about yourself, I think, but the research in and of itself isn't bad or good. It's just how we're using it. And sometimes it can be helpful. I mean, I think about how much, we were talking about this before we hit record, how much information is out in the world right now. And it's so available and so at your fingertips. And I think that can be really like a really fun thing. But then it's also being able to recognize, oh, I'm going into overwhelm. I'm putting too much information into my head, and now it's time to take a break. And, so there's pros and cons, and it's just about, knowing yourself, knowing your intentions. And also, I think recognizing what do you want for yourself on some level.
Oh, absolutely. Do you think there can also be a part sometimes for people where going back into research or maybe even staying in that research loop can start to sometimes become about avoidance.
Oh,
Have
yeah.
you found that? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Well, a couple of ways. Like one of the ways I was thinking about this is I think it's human nature to want to look for the easier path. It's so much easier to find a supplement or, some external thing. It's easier than changing yourself or doing, or doing the inner work of meeting this fear,
Yeah.
so that's some of it. And then you were talking more about like, what is the feeling if you didn't do the research, what would be the feeling that would show up in the space of that,
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to really agree with what you were saying, because if it could be caused by, let's say, something else that we could take a pill for example, but then we wouldn't have to then be with it, or we wouldn't have to do any inner work.
Yep, exactly.
Which is, of course, the hard stuff, right? So that avoidance piece. And then the same idea is if we didn't do that in the moment, what is the discomfort that's actually coming up?
Yeah.
And so that can be such a useful exercise. And I do that with so many of my clients, whether they might be using researching as an avoidance or some sort of a reassurance seeking.
Yeah.
I might ask them to pause the next time they are drawn into, the day of Googling, so to speak. Just pause first and actually just notice what kind of discomfort is present for them. Like, what is actually coming up that is driving this? And so much of the time it's fear. It's some kind, it's really fear. And if they're able to really work with the fear in the moment, a lot of the times the need for that research or that afternoon of Googling, it just falls away.
Yeah. Yeah.
It falls away completely. So that's something that can come up as well, as even just noticing what is going on. And I think that's especially true when someone is already educated. They really already understand what's going on. So I'm not talking about, people at the very beginning where they're just learning what's happening. It's a little bit later that you see this pattern a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you start, that's such a good point, talking about like how we can like work with this loop. And, something that comes to mind is, I think the first thing is just not turning it into a rule or a restriction, like something you shouldn't or can't do, or having it be like all or nothing. Because I think the minute we turn something into a rule or restriction, it's like automatically creates this fixation and you just want to do it more.
Yes.
Which is why, diets, I just have never felt like really work.
Same.
It just immediately creates this like total focus on it.
Yes, exactly. Must have the cake now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, it's not make or break, it's more like, oh, I think what really helped me start to, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, how our experiences were a little bit different in that, for a lot of people, once they understand what is going on with them, the mystery is solved. They have so much more clarity. The need to research just kind of goes by the wayside, and they don't have that. And then there's like, for me, my experience was more that pattern itself. And maybe because I had it for so many decades, it was so deeply ingrained that was just the default behavioral pattern that I would go to whenever I felt discomfort or I felt like I wanted some level of certainty or, and so even when I understood insomnia and I just kept the pattern, but changed the topic. And so for me, it was like, how do I want to work with this pattern of feeling the need to hop on Google every time I feel some uncertainty or something doesn't make sense or, something like that. And, I had to think about it more in a long-term fashion. Like, why would I want to start initiating some boundaries or start like looking at changing this pattern for myself? And it's like, what I really wanted was to not need to know the answer to everything, to live in the flow of life and trust that, to trust myself and my ability to sleep. Like, start honing that level of trust that comes with moving in a world that's always in flow. Nothing is really permanent. Everything flows, everything's changing. And just like, what would it be like to not have to control this all the time? So like looking at like, how did I want to be in relationship with my life as a long-term thing being more beneficial to me than the short-term assurance or whatever little thing I could find on the internet. And now I'm talking more about when I'm researching in a way that is from that intention of fixing, or whatever I am or whatever my present circumstances aren't right or aren't good enough. Not so much the watermelon that we've been talking about.
No,
but for me, like that was
only good.
Yeah. For me, the personality of researching can very easily swing into that direction. So, I would notice like when I was getting out the laptop to avoid feeling something, just like you said, just starting to, first thing was just noticing that. And then, sometimes I would notice and I would research anyway, and that's fine. And sometimes I would decide, you know what, I'm going to close the laptop lid. And just that action of closing the top of just that, like it's an action. It feels nice to have an action.
Yes,
closing the lid. And then I would sort of replace that with, something else. Maybe it was a walk or cleaning the kitchen, getting the watermelon, whatever it is. Just replacing that behavior with something else was that gentle nudge to move out of that pattern. And from that, I really, like we've talked about, I wish I could actually get a little bit more of that researching in terms of, some, like I've had a weird eye thing coming up that I've got a diagnosis. And listen to this diagnosis. It's called, I think it's convergence insufficiency. And I'm thinking, and it's not that uncommon. I'm not worried about it at all. But why do they have to throw words like insufficiency into diagnosis? Like, I mean, is there like a worse word? Anything with the word?
They go out of their way. They go out of their way to create these labels.
I know. I'm like, okay, way to make, you start worrying right off the bat. And I'm not worried. I just need to like figure out what kind of glasses I need to get and all that. It's no big deal. But what was I talking about, Michelle? Pick it up.
Well,
I can't remember.
You're so now far removed, or
I'm just so
far outside of the
removed from
pattern.
Yeah, and I know
you want to go
this.
back in any capacity other than for the watermelon.
Exactly. Like I only really am interested in researching things that intrigue me or fascinate me or expand me or, help me be a better coach or just whatever. I'm not as interested in going down those fixing myself or my life roads anymore.
Yeah. Oh, and what a relief, right?
Yeah, it does. It frees up a lot of brain space for sure.
Oh, it does. And it sounds like there was a time where you were finding a lot of safety in doing research.
Yeah.
And then it sounded like there was this transition from finding more safety and trust in yourself.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Yeah. And I think that's really what we're all seeking when we're in this research pattern, is like a feeling of safety, ultimately.
Yes.
I just want to feel safe and okay.
Yeah.
And that's, and I think that leads into the idea of when you're wanting to shift it, if you're seeing this happening, to not be rigid, just like you were saying, to be really flexible with it. And I think that's important. And when I work with clients who are maybe using research as, let's say, reassurance seeking in the moment, and we're looking to shift that a little bit. Yeah. It really reminded me of what you were saying, where I might encourage them to pause and be with the discomfort, and then we'll work with that. But you know what? If they've done that for a little bit and they still want to research and Google, go for it. Go for it.
Yep.
Yeah. It's okay. It's definitely it's not an all or nothing, doesn't exist. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen this approached so many different ways by my clients. Like they sort of come up with what feels supportive or doable to them. I have had people just be like a total research detox, but then I've had, maybe they say something like, I just stopped researching after a certain time of the day, or, however they want to introduce that. Yeah, it's all okay. Whatever you decide or however you want to do it, there's really no right or wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And be kind to yourself along the way, because a lot of us have been in that research loop for a while, and it can feel a bit unsafe to step away from, but ultimately it's really about finding that trust and safety within ourselves. Yeah. And that's a bigger piece for sure.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, anything else that you can think of to add to our research conversation today?
Oh, I don't know. I think we covered everything I was thinking of, actually.
Yeah. Oh, girl, it is always so wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm always so excited to come on and chat anytime.
Yeah. And please do tell everyone where they can find you.
You can find me at hopefulmind.com.
Awesome. Go check out her site, get on Michelle's list, do all the things. Thanks again, Michelle. And
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
It was fun. And to everyone out there listening, thanks for being with us today. This is the Mind, Body, Sleep podcast. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being here today. If you love what you heard on today's episode, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the podcast. And if you need more support with your sleep, join me in the Mind, Body, Sleep Mentorship. This 3-month one-on-one program will transform your relationship with sleep so you can get back to living the life that you love, free from the fear of not sleeping. Head on over to bethkendall.com for more details. I'll see you next time.